Hello, holy brothers and sisters. Welcome back to Shiur number 24 of Chayei Moharan. As a reminder, these shiurim are dedicated in memory of my maternal grandparents, Menachem ben David Tzvi and Alana Basara. May our learning and connection to Rebbe Nachman bring their neshamas the highest of aliyahs. So, for this week, we're going to be concluding the section of Chayei Moharan, which discusses Rebbe Nachman's place of birth and his travels, known in Hebrew as Makom Yeshivasei Unesiasav. And now we are going to be starting a new section called Nisi'a Eretz Yisrael, a very deep section which will be discussing Rebbe Nachman's whole trip to Israel and what happened in the Holy Land, how he got there, what were the reasons he wanted to get there. Very incredible things that we're going to be uncovering. So we're going to finish off with Kuf Chav Ches, which is the last paragraph of that section. That's chapter 128, and then begin with 129, which is the start of a new section. Typically, when we're learning Torah in general, let's say we're doing a siyum on a section of the Torah, or if we're learning a new tractate of the Talmud, our Gemara, it's always nice to be able to finish something off and immediately start back to the beginning or start a new section. Just like we do on Simchas Torah, where we finish the Torah of V'zos Bracha, immediately we go straight to the beginning and we start Bereshis all over again. So I thought that would be something that we can continue on as we start and end new chapters in this Sefer. We can finish off a section and immediately begin a new one. So that was the intention here with what we're learning in Chayei Moharan. Some quick plugs. Firstly, you'll notice I'm sporting our In Breslov Burns a Fire hoodie, as I usually do. But also, if you've seen some of Rabbi Giselson's shiur, you might have spotted this mug as well. I finally got one for myself. So you can get yours at breslovshop.org. I highly recommend going and check it out. There's a lot of really cool Breslov paraphernalia on there. Additionally, if you follow us on our social media, you might have seen a little bit of chatter regarding a new Tikkun HaKlali. You might be aware that we have a previous version already out there, but we just put out a brand new one with a whole new cover. Here's the back as well. It's got a table of contents separated into different chapter headings as well, and each section has a explanation. I can show you an example of that too. And it's going to be, the Tikkun HaKlali is in a interlinear translation, and each section has explanations and connects it also to Breslov. So we've got, just like the previous one, we've got Kriya Shema, with the bedtime Shema, we've got Tfilas HaDerech, that's the traveler's prayer. We've also added Nishmas Kol Chai, which is a special prayer that we say on Shabbos, but it's also for different segulot as well. And we've added a section on Hisbodedus, a quick 1 minute, just short meditations that you could do in order to enhance your discussions with Hashem, and something called a pidyon, which is a specific way of giving tzedakah for your neshama. So this next version is going to have full English for all the prayers, unlike the other one, which just had the English for the Tikkun HaKlali. And it is live on Amazon now. So I will post the link in the description on YouTube and on Instagram, or the link in our bio. So go get yourself a copy. I highly recommend it. It is the perfect companion if you're traveling. It still fits in the pocket. So a really great little sefer to have with you wherever you go. So without further ado, let's dive into our content tonight. We've got a lot to get through. And as always, it's going to be exciting and juicy. So here we go. Okay. Writes Reb Nachman, Achar kishaba melemberg, loy nasa oid al ha-Ukraina, lemertar kedarka makoidem machmas hachelas. So, this section is ending off by saying that after the Rebbe's return from Lemberg, he no longer traveled about in the Ukraine to teach as he did formerly, because he had already come down with his sickness, which was tuberculosis. As y'all might know, even though we have not yet covered, obviously, Rebbe Nachman's passing yet, but Rebbe Nachman famously passed away due to complications with tuberculosis. Towards the end of his life, he obviously was not traveling as much. For a quick background on Lemberg and where Lemberg comes from, this is a book called Until the Mashiach, a really fantastic book that also is a biographical sketch of Rebbe Nachman's life. So Lemberg is the largest city in East Galicia. Lemberg is located at, if you want to know the latitude and longitude, it's 49.50 north, and longitude is 24 degrees east. It is population approximately of 150,000, of which about 20% were Jews back in the day. Lemberg was for many centuries the seat of some of the leading rabbis of Europe. During Rebbe Nachman's lifetime, the Haskalah movement found a foothold there. And Rebbe Nachman settled there approximately in the year 1808. So that's when he was there. So that was towards the end of Rebbe Nachman's life. So this is one of two different cities we're going to be looking at today. So, continuing on in the Sefer. Upam achas haya mesaper b'Shabbos shira me'inyan shebiyamim hakoidmim haya nasa ala medina be'itim halalu v'haya oimer sham Torah nifla v'chulei v'haya mesaper kimiskagea. Once on Shabbos shira, Rebbe Nachman was talking about how in earlier times he would go traveling, and at this time of the year he would also be giving really wonderful lessons. And he spoke about this time that he was teaching and on the road and traveling with deep feeling and nostalgia and emotion, because as we mentioned in the past 2 weeks, one of the 6 times Rebbe Nachman would give long, lengthy lessons, 3 were on the road, and 3 were set in the town that he was living, and one of those times was Shabbos Shira. We discussed that a lot in length in last week's Shiur. So, recounting those days, Rebbe Nachman spoke about it very fondly. Va'amar kishehaya yoshev al ha'gala haya inyan miyuchad. This is a very poetic part of today's paragraph. Ukishaya bala ir shenasa l'sham v'yasa l'krasev v'asu l'kavod haya nasa inyan acher. Kishenichnas el ha'ir haya inyan acher. Kisha amar Torah sham haya inyan acher. Acher kach kisha kibo ma'is haya inyan acher v'chishev kiyoytze bazeh kama inyanim shebachal pam haya inyan acher v'amumba midvarav. Rebbe Nachman, he spoke about how when he was sitting on the coach on the journey, this in itself was something on its own. And we'll understand what this means in a second. Then, when he arrived at the edge of the town he was traveling to, and the people come out to meet him, and pay respects, that was something different entirely. And then when he went into the town proper, that was something else. And then, when he gave his discourse there, that was something different again. And when he was given money, that was something else. And the Rebbe listed a number of different aspects of each trip, and he said how each one was something different entirely. So what does this mean exactly? So I think if we break this down, I think it means that each moment that Rebbe Nachman was going through along each of his journeys, that each moment had this unique spiritual light. That riding in his wagon, entering a town, being welcomed, giving Torah, receiving funds, each moment was a brand new avodah and something totally unique that was happening in each of those moments. And I don't think Rebbe Nachman was just simply reminiscing as we do when we're feeling nostalgic about a moment in the past. I think he was also touching on that there was a mystical process involved in each one of these occurrences. And each one had a physical step mirrored by a spiritual function. So, you know me, and the spiritual takeaways that we can perhaps find, you know how I love to do that. So I think even if we personally in our own daily lives don't necessarily experience these massive spiritual things that are taking place in the everyday, I think we can still try be awake and mindful in all of our actions, whether it's preparing a Shabbos or offering someone a ride or learning with our children. Each step can be very, very holy, and it is very holy. So I think that's something we can take to heart and perhaps try to internalize and apply to our own life. So let's just finish off this paragraph here. Shahaya loy be'inyan hanesiya avodah miyuchedes nifla v'nerais ma'od b'chol inyan b'fnei atzmai hein b'hanesiya hein b'kovid v'chole. So happy is he who is worthy of understanding every single thing that happened to Rebbe Nachman. In everything that happened to him, the most awesome and mysterious secrets were involved. And we're going to see a lot of that in the coming weeks when we travel with Rebbe Nachman to Eretz Yisrael. So, let's give a quick recap on perhaps a little bit touching on why Rebbe Nachman wanted to go to Eretz Yisrael. But you know what? Now that I'm saying that, I think it's better off if we just dive right in and get started, because all of it will become clear as we learn and uncover. B'tchila koidem shenasa le'Eretz Yisrael. In the beginning, before Rabbi Nachman traveled to Eretz Yisrael, land of Israel, nasa leKemenetz. He traveled to the city of Kemenetz. Kamavoyar kfar b'sefer hanidpas, and this is explained in a different sefer known as Sefer Shivchei Haran, which is a book that talks about actually Reb Noson's life, and there also is described the order of events and the order of the trip, which we'll touch on in the coming weeks. Amar Rabbi Shimon. So Rabbi Nachman had an attendant who was known as Rabbi Shimon, and he accompanied him on a lot of his trips and was accompanying him on this one as well. Yesh לפני נסיעה ואיני יודע להיכן. One day he said to Rabbi Shimon that I have a trip that I need to go on, but I don't know where it is. V'sachak Rabbi Shimon. So Rabbi Shimon, he laughed at him. He laughed at the Rebbe and he said, Eich noisim im ein yodim leheichan noisim. How can you go on a trip and say that you're traveling if you don't know where you're going? Leheshiv loy be'emes ani יודע. Ein יודע. Sorry. So Rabbi Nachman said, the emes, in real truth, I don't know where I'm going. V'halach Rabbi Shimon v'heichan agala v'susim v'chal tzarchei nesi'a v'nasa imay. So Rabbi Shimon, he went, he gathered the horse and the carriage, and he started to prepare for the trip. Okay. So, I think this area of Rabbi Shimon and the attendant is a nice example of simple emunah in emunah tzadikim. So Rabbi Nachman, he declares that he needs to travel, but he doesn't know where, and this isn't from a state of confusion. This too is Rabbi Nachman's emunah pshuta, that he knows deep in the spiritual world that there's something that he needs to accomplish, and therefore he's just going to follow Lech Lecha, he's going to follow Hashem's ways. And a tzaddik of his level moves not with logic, but with bitachon and with emunah. He moves with trust in Hashem and belief in Hashem. And I think that's very opposite of a Western mindset, because in the Western world we need to have a plan. You ever had a job interview? I know I've had job interviews, or people are speaking to you and they want to know you got a 5-year plan. What's your 5-year plan? I don't think I've ever had a 5-year plan. I know like perhaps where I'd like to be in 5 years, but I always struggle with like being able to answer that question. I think that's very Western mindset, that you have to know where you're going. You also have to know where you're coming from in order to know where you're going. That's a very Hasidic idea. But I think ever since COVID told us that like we don't need to know where we're going. We can just be. Because I think in beginning of February 2019, if you would have asked us where are you going to be in 5 years, I don't think we would have been able to answer the period of time that was COVID. None of us would have been able to answer that was going to be a period of time we were going to be going through. So I think that really taught us, and something that I internalized and applied to myself during that really weird period of time, is how to live a little bit more with Hashem, and to trust His process, and to just be with Hashem, and to know that He's controlling the world, because how else do you explain all the things that go on in the universe? And I think Rebbe Nachman teaches us that like some journeys or perhaps all the journeys that we're going on, they will reveal their destination after we just start moving and get up and start moving our feet. So this is perhaps what Rebbe Nachman was going through himself, that he knew there was something spiritual he had to accomplish. He didn't exactly know where it was or what the mission was, and he just had to go. And when Hashem places something on your heart, you don't always just need the map. You just need to trust Hashem and take that next step. And perhaps this is what Rebbe Nachman is teaching us, if we can apply something from his personal life. Okay. Over Nisi'a, continuing inside. Imay bikesh mir Rabbeinu zal sheyisa derech kfar v'lechevitz v'kibel sham oid ish echad v'nasa ish echad misham gam keni mahem ad sheba lemejabush. So on the way, this Reb Shmuel, this attendant, he asked Rebbe Nachman if they could pick someone up on the way from Valachevitz, and Rebbe Nachman agreed, and they picked him up, and they continued on to Mejabush. I don't think there's anything particular to pull out from there. Perhaps we'd be overanalyzing if we did, but that's just simply what happened in the story. Vadayin layadu lehikan noisim, but still, on the way to Mejabush, they didn't know where we're going. It still wasn't clear where or what Rebbe Nachman had to accomplish. Ubo leMejabush lebeis aviv ve'imay hatzadikim zochrein levracha v'samchu al biyasei me'oid. In Mejabush lived the holy Rebbe Simcha and Rebbetzin Fega. This is Rebbe Nachman's parents, and they lived in that town, and obviously they were very glad that their son, Rebbe Nachman, was coming to visit. Ansa imay zochrein levracha ve'amra, Rebbe Nachman's mother, Fega, she obviously came to greet him, and she said, Beni, my son, Masai telech leziknei ha-Baal Shem Tov zal, hainu al kivrei ha-Kadosh. She asked him, my son, when will you be going to visit your great-grandfather, the Baal Shem Tov, obviously referring to his kever, the place that he was buried in Mejabush? Heishiv Rabbeinu zal, Rabbi Nachman replied, Im zikni roitze lerois imi yavoy lekan. Rabbi Nachman replied, and obviously this wasn't in a way of like giving attitude at all to his mother. This is simply just a statement that he was making, that if the Baal Shem Tov wanted to appear to him or to greet him, then he would just come to where Rabbi Nachman was. He didn't necessarily have to go to the kever, and no spoilers, we're going to see that how that comes about in a second. Achar kach balayla shachav lishoin ubabiker amdoi imoi ubasa elav amrloi. Later on that night, Rebbe Nachman obviously went to sleep, and in the morning he got up, and his mother came to him in the morning and said, "Haloi zikencha kvar haya etzlech." It was clear by just greeting Rebbe Nachman that she was able to see that the Baal Shem Tov had indeed somehow came to Rebbe Nachman. Umasai telech elav, but still she asked, "When will you be going to see him?" Hainu al kivrei, to see his gravesite, to daven at his kever. Heishiv Rabbeinu zal, but Rabbi Nachman replied, Achshav lo ehiyeh al kivroi b'chazirasai. Rabbi Nachman said, immediately, once I return from my trip, I will go to his tzion, I will go to where he's buried, Emir Hashem, with Hashem's help. Ehiyeh al kivroi b'chein haya. I will go to his kever, and that's indeed what happened. So let's just examine this one part from what Rabbi Nachman was, this conversation he was having with his mother, just so we can understand a little bit of the statement of the tzaddik. So when he asks when he'll visit the Baal Shem Tov's grave, and he replies, if he wants to see me, he'll come to me. This wasn't a way of Rabbi Nachman being like flippant, if we can use such a word to describe Rabbi Nachman's his behaviors. And I think he was more saying that the connection to a tzaddik isn't just about place and time, it's also about this alignment of neshamas, and this is the connection Rebbe Nachman had with the Baal Shem Tov. As we've mentioned in previous shiurim, I don't recall which one, but in Breslov tradition, there are 5 tzaddikim. That starts with Moshe Rabbeinu, then it goes to Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, to the Arizal, to the Baal Shem Tov and Rebbe Nachman, and that's a direct chain of 5 tzaddikim. So the Baal Shem Tov and Rebbe Nachman, obviously being his great-grandson, they had a very, very strong connection. And Rebbe Nachman obviously grew up in the home of the Baal Shem Tov, even though he had just passed away a couple years before Rebbe Nachman was born. So that's a little bit of what Rebbe Nachman's response was to his mother. So continuing on, let's try and understand what was this journey Rebbe Nachman had to go on. So Rabbi Shimon, the Rebbe's attendant, on the way to Mezhebush, unfortunately, he fell ill. And he came to Mezhebush feeling really sick. He was not feeling very great at all. Rabbi Nachman demanded pretty much that Rabbi Shimon stay and remain in Mezhebush and not come with him to Kamenetz. Ukishalach Rabbeinu Zal El Rabbi Shimon liftar mimenu v'linsa leKamenetz le'ratz Rabbi Shimon lahanichoi ad sheyiftichoi al diburoi hakadosh shebevadei b'chizrasoi imsa ene b'chayim v'shalom v'chein haya. So Rabbi Shimon, in a way of like showing some nerves, he said that he didn't want Rabbi Nachman to leave, to go to Kamenetz until he promised or assured Rabbi Shimon that he'd be able to take him on the rest of this journey that Rabbi Nachman had to go on. And therefore Rabbi Nachman, he gave him this promise, and Rabbi Shimon ended up going on this trip with him. So let's uncover a little bit of what the city of Kamenetz is, just so we know where Rabbi Nachman is heading to. So Kamenetz, it says here in the book Until the Mashiach, Kamenetz is situated near the Smotrek River, and obviously it's in the Ukraine. It was the capital city of Podolia, and it's seated on the provincial government and an important trading and communication center. In 1750, King Augustus III expelled all Jews from Kamenetz. So that was also shortly after Rabbi Nachman was born. Yeah. I should know the dates because we have been teaching this shiur and we've been learning the shiur together for a while. Because Rabbi Nachman was born in 1772. There it is. Yeah, after Rabbi Nachman was born, obviously. Okay. V'gam, koydem kshenasa mi beisai, amar Rabbi Shimon, hasuchal lisa imi, v'amar loi shenisi yossi yismamea, oi b'shvua, oi shavua, oi shtayim, oi chodesh, oi reva, shana, oi chatzi shana, oi shana temima, oi b'schila shasak, Rabbi Shimon zal. So, Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Nachman were having a conversation towards the beginning before Rabbi Nachman set out, and he was asking Rabbi Nachman, how long is this trip going to take? And Rabbi Nachman couldn't exactly give him a straightforward answer because Rabbi Nachman was not exactly clear yet how long this trip was going to take, whether it was going to be 3 months or 6 months or even a whole year. And at first, Rabbi Shimon, he didn't even say anything when Rabbi Nachman was telling this to him. But when he saw that Rabbi Nachman was seriously intent on making this journey, he said he would drop everything and go with him, no matter how long the journey might take. And in the end, he did actually travel with Rabbi Nachman on his journey. So, going back to Mezhebush, of Mezhebush, kishnifta Rabbeinu Zal, mimenu koydem nisiasai, when Rabbi Nachman departed from Mezhebush on his trip, Bishash Rabbi Shimon haya mutal al Eretz Yisrael, while Rabbi Shimon was still unwell, on Rabbi Shimon va'amar Rabbeinu Zal, masay esra panim imachem, ki halay tuchel lismamea b'derach kama she'amar b'veisai she'eino יודע kama ismamea. So Rabbi Nachman said goodbye before leaving Mezhebush. Rabbi Shimon asked, when will I see you again? Because you could take a long time on this journey. For Rabbi Nachman, it said that he did not know exactly how long it would take. Rabbi Nachman then replied that he would not be gone longer for 8 or 10 days. And now, you might be asking this exact question, wait a second. How did Rebbe Nachman know how long it was going to take? The paragraph just before, about 3 lines ago, we just learned that Rebbe Nachman didn't know how long it was going to be, whether it was going to be 6 months, 3 months, a whole year, a few days. What changed? How come just a couple sentences ago we didn't know, and now we did know? This is the exact question Rabbi Shimon had. Sha'alai, so Rabbi Shimon asked him, Halai, amartem beveschem she'enchem יודע, yodim, kama tisma me'ahu baderech. Wait, Rabbi Nachman, 1 second. You're telling me now that you actually know how long this is going to take, but before you didn't know how long this is going to take. So Rabbi Shimon was clearly looking for some sort of explanation here because things weren't adding up to him. So Heishiv loy. So the Rebbe replied to him, Be'emes bevesi lo yadati. So he says, in all truth, I really didn't know. Aval achshav ani יודע shani tzarich l'nsoya lekamenetz. So Rebbe Nachman is saying, before I had no clue where we were supposed to go. I had no clue how long I was going to be there. But now I know that I need to go to the city of Kamenetz. V'lo yasmamea harbe ki im kanal. And I won't be there for very long. Why? Ki ba'oisa halayla haya etzli ha-Baal Shem Tov zal. Because that night, remember, a couple paragraphs ago, we were learning that Rebbe Nachman's mother asked him, when will you be going to daven by your great-grandfather's tzion, by his kever, where he's buried? And he said that if you wanted, or if the Baal Shem Tov wanted to appear to you, then he would do so himself. So that night when Rebbe Nachman passed away, the Baal Shem Tov actually did appear to him, just like Rebbe Nachman had said he would. And he appeared to him in a dream. יודע להיכן לנסוע היינו לקמנץ. And he revealed to Rebbe Nachman in this dream where he was supposed to go, and that place that he was supposed to go is the city of Kamenetz. And that's where he was going. He was leaving Mezhebush in order to go to Kamenetz. V'nasam yad lekamenetz, and he went there immediately. Masha asa sham ne'ala me'ein kol chai. But what happened? Everything that occurred there, all that Rebbe Nachman had to accomplish, was a complete mystery and is a complete mystery. V'adayin lo noida l'shum adam ba'olam ad bias hagoyel b'mher v'yemenu amen. And everything that occurred there was never known to any person in the entire world, and it will not be revealed until the coming of Mashiach. So that's a bit of a cliffhanger. But many of the things that the tzaddikim go through, we don't necessarily know, and those are for the tzaddikim only to accomplish. And there are technically some ideas of what Rebbe Nachman had to do there, but for the most part, it is a complete mystery of what took place in the city of Kamenetz. So there are talks, and there are some stories shared of perhaps what that was, but Rebbe Nachman actually debunked most of the things that people said took place there, saying that those things that people think happen are not the reasons that happened, whether it's to overthrow a government or other situations. So we're not exactly going to dive into those because those ideas were even said by Rebbe Nachman to have not been the reasons. But let's dive in a little bit into this appearance by the Baal Shem Tov, and then we got a cool contrast and mirror of Rebbe Nachman's trip versus the Baal Shem Tov's trip to Eretz Yisrael. So we've got this clarity that comes to Rebbe Nachman because of this trip, because of this dream, that he has of the Baal Shem Tov appearing to him. And only after Rebbe Nachman had already begun the journey, he was about to leave Mezhebush, did the Baal Shem Tov appear and reveal that he must go to Kamenetz. And if we can apply something to our own life, perhaps it could be that we don't always receive the clarity before we move. Sometimes we have to start moving, and then the clarity comes. Just something I thought of while I was preparing for this shiur tonight. So, there is a custom in many Hasidic communities on the last day of Pesach. We have a special Suda called either it's referred to as the Baal Shem Tov Suda or the Mashiach Suda. If you're familiar with Chabad circles, you will definitely have heard of the Mashiach Suda before. But in most Hasidic circles, we share the story of the Baal Shem Tov's attempted trip to the land of Israel. Infamously, the Baal Shem Tov actually never made it to Eretz Yisrael. He got really, really close, and then he had to turn back. Crazy wild story where he saved the Jewish community in Turkey. There was a story, like part of the story, he ends up on this island and there's cannibals and he has to run from the cannibals, and the whole section where he forgets like all his Torah learning and he has to really start from the basics of Aleph and Beis. Really crazy stuff. I highly recommend checking it out. Perhaps on YouTube here I can link a PDF of the story because I highly recommend reading that for your own understanding. Perhaps maybe in this series, because it's connected to Eretz Yisrael, maybe we'll uncover it in one of the upcoming lessons. But just on a short, brief level, Rebbe Nachman said that there was a reason why he made it to Eretz Yisrael, but why the Baal Shem Tov didn't. And we're going to see a lot of this in upcoming weeks, and that's why I wanted to kind of use this as an introduction to what we're going to be learning. And one of the reasons Rebbe Nachman said that he was actually able to make the journey to Eretz Yisrael, unlike the Baal Shem Tov who actually didn't make it, is because Rebbe Nachman said that he was able to lower himself to a state called katnus. It's a state of smallness, a state of humility, a state of simplicity. And we're going to see some really bizarre things in the next coming weeks where Rebbe Nachman actually acted in a way where you wouldn't think a Rebbe would act, where he lowered himself almost to the actions of a child, where he played simple games with children, he acted foolishly, he acted childishly, he had just regular, everyday conversations with people on the boat. Really bizarre things that we're going to see. But Rebbe Nachman said that by being able to lower himself to this level of katnus, he was protected and he wasn't affected by some of the negative forces that were really stopping him to get to Eretz Yisrael, and really paved the way also for more people to get to Eretz Yisrael nowadays, which is really, really incredible to learn, and we're going to see some of that. But he's saying that the Baal Shem Tov wasn't able to lower himself to that level of katnus, and he stayed in this expanded awareness known as gadlus. So that's one of the reasons why Rebbe Nachman says he was able to get there and why the Baal Shem Tov wasn't. But we're going to see this interesting mirror where the Baal Shem Tov brought his eldest daughter, pretty much his daughter was considered one of his disciples, one of his closest chassidim, and his daughter's name was Adel. And Rebbe Nachman actually named his eldest daughter the same name, Adel, after his grandmother. And we see actually in many accounts within Breslov books, which talks about Rebbe Nachman's life. We've even met Adel a couple times in the past 24 shiurim, I'd say. And Adel also comes with Rebbe Nachman on his trip to Eretz Yisrael. So there's a bit of a mirror there. And perhaps if we can find some meaning in this, it's that in Chassidus, a child represents also emunah pshuta, because when you're a child, you wake up in the morning with this most beautiful excitement to be able to start your day. And as you get older and older, some of that excitement starts to wane, and we lose some of that excitement and vigor. So that katnus, when you're a child, even though Ada was slightly older when she joined Rebbe Nachman on this trip, perhaps she represents some of that katnus along the way. And if you've ever read Rabbi Yaakov Klein's Story of Our Lives, which is an explanation on Rebbe Nachman's first story called The Lost Princess, for me it's what changed my life and brought me to Breslov, that specific story from Rebbe Nachman. That explanation by Rabbi Yaakov Klein is all about trying to find that inner child, where somewhere along the way we lose that childlike innocence and joy in serving Hashem, and how to be able to find that again. So this was a really jam-packed week as we kick off the journey towards Eretz Yisrael with Rebbe Nachman, a journey that is going to take us quite a long time, but it's going to be awesome, and it's going to be so holy and so great, and I can't wait to go on that journey along with you all, learning about this really holy section and period in Rebbe Nachman's life. So we've just entered a most mysterious and holy section of the Sefer on the journey to Eretz Yisrael, and I'll say that this isn't just history, it's going to be a map also for our own lives and the lives of the Jewish people, as Rebbe Nachman paved the way for many people to be able to get to Eretz Yisrael. And Rebbe Nachman didn't begin his journey, as you mentioned, with a plan. He didn't even know where he was going, and he traveled in katnus and in not knowing and in a state of humility, and that's what allowed him to succeed where even giants like the Baal Shem Tov weren't able to make it. And because sometimes the deepest aliyah doesn't come from understanding, it comes from surrender. I think the same is true for us, that it also comes from surrender. And in our own lives, we often wait for clarity before moving forward, but Rebbe Nachman also teaches you don't always just need the whole picture. You can just take those few steps forward, and things, God willing, will be clear as we proceed. So that's my wish to you all. May we all live in that state of mind with an open heart, and like Rebbe Nachman, we all merit to walk those hidden roads with courage, with humility, and the quiet fire of emunah that lights the way, even in the dark. Va'afilu b'hastara. So I will leave you with that, wishing you all a fantastic week.
אין ייאוש בעולם כלל, עם שמחה, עם דיבור, עם אמונה פשוטה.